There's a phrase being used by some of the world's leading climate scientists right now, and it should stop every single person in Europe in their tracks. They are saying that the record-breaking heat the planet has been experiencing has the fingerprints of climate change all over it. Not the suggestion of climate change, not the possibility, the fingerprints. Meaning the evidence is so clear, so measurable, and so undeniable that scientists are speaking with certainty that used to take decades to build. And layered on top of that long-term warming crisis, a powerful natural climate force called El Niño is now returning. And the combination of the two is about to make this one of the most dangerous summers Europe has ever faced. Tonight, we are going to break down exactly what El Niño is, how it works, why scientists are calling it a terrifying partner to climate change, and what people across Europe should actually be preparing for this summer. Let us start at the very beginning, because to understand what is happening right now, you need to understand El Niño properly, not just as a name that appears in weather reports, but as a planetary scale force that has the power to rewrite weather patterns across the entire globe. The tropical Pacific Ocean receives more sunlight than any other region on Earth. Under normal conditions, powerful trade winds blow westward along the equator, pushing warm surface water from the coast of South America toward Asia and Australia. Those warm waters pool in the western Pacific, and the sea surface there sits significantly warmer and physically higher than the eastern Pacific. Cold, nutrient-rich water rises up from the depths along the South American coast through a process called upwelling, and the whole system stays in a kind of balance. But at irregular intervals, every 2 to 7 years on average, that balance breaks down. The trade winds weaken. Without those winds pushing warm water westward, gravity takes over and the massive pool of warm water in the western Pacific begins sliding back eastward toward the coast of South America. Sea surface temperatures in the central and eastern equatorial Pacific rise far above normal. Scientists formally declare an El Niño when that average temperature stays more than 0.5 degrees Celsius above the long-term average for 5 consecutive months. The most recent major El Niño, which ran through 2023 and 2024, saw sea surface temperatures rise approximately 2 degrees Celsius above normal, one of the 5 strongest events ever recorded. Like and subscribe, because what happened after that El Niño is the reason we are having this conversation right now. When those tropical Pacific waters heat up during an El Niño, the effects do not stay in the Pacific. Heat in the tropics is the engine room of global atmospheric circulation. When that engine runs hotter than normal, it sends ripples of disruption outward in every direction. The atmosphere above the warmer ocean heats up and rises faster, altering pressure patterns, shifting jet streams, changing where rain falls and where droughts develop, and most critically, pushing global average temperatures higher across the entire planet. El Niño alone can raise global temperatures by 0.1 to 0.2 degrees Celsius above where they would otherwise be. And in a world that is already running dangerously hot from decades of greenhouse gas emissions, that additional push can be the difference between a warm year and a year that shatters every record in history. Like and subscribe, because that is exactly what we saw in 2024 and what could happen again very soon. The year 2024 was officially confirmed by the World Meteorological Organization as the hottest year ever recorded in human history, with global average temperatures sitting 1.55 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. That number is not just a scientific statistic. It represents the first full calendar year to breach the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold set by the Paris Agreement, the level that world governments had committed to avoiding as the boundary beyond which climate impacts become dramatically more dangerous. And both the timing and the magnitude of that record-breaking heat were directly connected to the El Niño event that ran through 2023 and 2024. Climate scientist Dr. Friederike Otto put it plainly when she said this record-breaking heat has the fingerprints of climate change all over it, pointing out that temperatures on this scale were once exceptional, even in the height of summer, and that climate change is making heat waves hotter, longer, and far more frequent. Now here is what should concern every person in Europe right now. NOAA, the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, is currently forecasting a 61% chance that a new El Niño will develop during the summer months of 2026. Not just any El Niño. Forecasters are giving a 1 in 4 chance that this event could reach what scientists call super El Niño intensity, a threshold that has been crossed only a handful of times in recorded history. ECMWF model data, updated across consecutive monthly runs in March, April, and May, shows each new model output projecting a stronger event than the last, with the main ENSO region showing temperature anomalies exceeding plus 2 degrees Celsius, consistent with a super-strength event. The World Meteorological Organization is warning governments to prepare for the full range of consequences. And crucially, every forecast model is pointing directly at Europe as one of the regions that will feel the impact most severely. Like and subscribe, Because what is being projected for Europe this summer is not just another hot season. Let us be precise about what Europe is already dealing with before a new El Niño even fully develops. The European State of the Climate 2025 report, produced by the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts and the World Meteorological Organization, and compiled by around 100 scientific contributors, presents a picture of a continent that is already in the grip of accelerating climate breakdown. Europe is the world's fastest warming continent. It is warming twice as fast as the global average due to human activities, primarily the burning of fossil fuels. In 2025, at least 95% of the continent recorded above-average temperatures for the year. That is not a regional warming trend. T-hat is continent-wide, near total warming that has no historical precedent. The statistics from 2025 alone are staggering. Wildfires burned over 1 million hectares of land across Europe, the largest area ever recorded, roughly equivalent to burning the entire island of Cyprus to the ground. In Spain, Cyprus, Germany, the Netherlands, and even the United Kingdom, wildfire emissions reached record levels. Drought conditions affected more than half the continent. 70% of Europe's rivers recorded below average annual flow, threatening water security for hundreds of millions of people. Marine heat waves affected 86% of Europe's surrounding ocean waters. Subarctic Finland, Norway, and Sweden, places that sit within or near the Arctic Circle, endured their longest and most severe heat wave on record, with temperatures spiking to 34.9 degrees Celsius and remaining above 30 degrees for 21 consecutive days. Turkey reached 50 degrees Celsius for the first time in recorded history. 85% of Greece faced temperatures close to or above 40 degrees Celsius, peaking at 44 degrees. Like and subscribe, because these are not projections of what might happen in the future. These are things that already happened in Europe in 2025. The human cost of this escalating heat is measured not just in property damage and disrupted agriculture, but in lives lost. Every year between 2000 and 2019, approximately 489,000 people died globally from extreme heat. In Europe specifically, heat-related mortality has already increased by around 30% over the past 2 decades. Scientists warn that without ambitious adaptation measures, Europe could see 3 times as many heat-related deaths by the end of this century. Research from World Weather Attribution found that a single heat wave affecting cities in Italy, Spain, Portugal, France, the UK, Greece, Croatia, and Hungary in 2025 caused approximately 2,300 deaths over just a 10-day period. And 1,500 of those deaths, 65% of the total, would not have occurred if climate change had not intensified the event. That is not an estimate of how many deaths climate change might cause in the future. That is a forensic accounting of lives that climate change already took. Now add a new El Niño on top of this already superheated baseline, and the picture for summer 2026 becomes deeply alarming. Climate Impact Company's summer 2026 forecast describes the development of a major drought across Europe extending into southwest Russia, driven by the combination of developing El Niño conditions, a prominent North Atlantic wormhole south of Greenland, and emerging marine heat waves in both the Norwegian Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. Severe Weather Europe's analysis of the latest ECMWF and ECMO long-range models shows the emerging El Niño anomaly producing a stronger seasonal weather signal than any of the earlier model runs predicted, with drought risk identified in central, north-central, and east-central parts of Europe, and above normal temperatures forecast for western, central, southern, and parts of eastern Europe throughout the summer. NOAA's outlook for the June to August period favors above normal temperatures broadly. The seasonal forecast word that keeps repeating across every major modeling system is the same. Heat wave risk is elevated, and that risk is associated with the return of blocking high-pressure systems. Like and subscribe, because blocking highs are the specific atmospheric mechanism that turns uncomfortable warm weather into lethal heat. A blocking high is exactly what it sounds like, a high-pressure system that locks itself in place over a region for days or even weeks, blocking the normal flow of Atlantic weather systems that would otherwise bring cooler air and rain. When a blocking high sits over Western or Central Europe in summer, it acts like a lid on a pot. Heat pours in from North Africa and the Mediterranean. The ground dries out, soils lose their ability to absorb moisture, and with no cloud cover and no rainfall to moderate temperatures, the heat simply builds with nowhere to go. Under current climate conditions, these blocking high systems are becoming more frequent and more persistent, and the presence of El Niño conditions in the Pacific is expected to intensify the atmospheric patterns that allow these blocks to form over Europe. The specific geography of El Niño's influence on Europe adds another layer of complexity that most mainstream weather reporting completely fails to explain. El Niño shifts the global jet stream, that powerful band of upper atmosphere wind that controls where weather systems track across the northern hemisphere. When El Niño alters the jet stream, It can lock high-pressure ridges over Central and Western Europe for extended periods, while simultaneously directing atmospheric moisture towards specific regions, creating a pattern of contrasts where some areas experience extreme drought and others face sudden and intense flooding when storm systems eventually break through. NOAA's detailed summer 2026 guidance specifically notes that Europe may experience both drought and flood headlines within the same summer, prolonged dry heat under blocking highs, then destructive flash flooding when those blocks eventually break down and storms erupt along the boundary between the trapped heat and incoming cooler air. Like and subscribe, because that alternation between extreme heat and extreme flooding is one of the most dangerous and underappreciated features of a warming European climate. Beyond the immediate human suffering caused by heat, drought, and flooding, the broader ecological consequences deserve serious attention. When drought covers more than half a continent and 70% of rivers run below normal flow, the consequences cascade through food systems, energy systems, and ecosystems simultaneously. Agriculture across Central and Eastern Europe faces severe stress when soils remain dry through critical growing months. Hydroelectric power generation drops sharply when river levels fall. Forests, stressed by years of drought, become more vulnerable to wildfires. And those wildfires release massive amounts of carbon dioxide, adding to greenhouse gas concentrations that drive further warming. It is a feedback loop. Warming causes drought, drought enables fires, fires release carbon, carbon causes more warming, and El Niño accelerates every stage of it. There's also a critical research dimension that scientists are still working urgently to understand. After 1960, records show a clear increase in the intensity of swings between El Niño and La Niña events, and researchers have found this change in amplitude is itself a signal of fossil fuel-caused climate change. In other words, the El Niño-La Niña cycle may be being directly intensified by climate change itself. A December 2025 study published in Nature Communications found that super El Niño events significantly increase the likelihood of what scientists call climate regime shifts, abrupt and persistent transitions in temperature, ocean conditions, and soil moisture that can endure for years or even decades after the El Niño fades. Under global warming scenarios, the study found, this effect would be greatly amplified. Like and subscribe, because we're not just talking about one hot summer. We are talking about atmospheric changes that could lock in new climate conditions for years to come. The WMO Secretary General Celeste Saulo has called directly on governments to prepare for what a strong El Niño event will mean, warning explicitly that it will exacerbate drought and heavy rainfall and increase the risk of heat waves both on land and in the ocean. The Copernicus Climate Change Service has confirmed that the past 3 years, 2023, 2024, and 2025, all averaged more than 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. At the current rate of global warming, the ECMWF's strategic lead for climate, Samantha Burgess, has warned the 1.5 degree limit set under the Paris Agreement could be reached before the end of this decade, more than 10 years earlier than was anticipated when the agreement was signed. What all of this means for people living in Europe this summer is both simple and serious. Above normal temperatures are the most likely outcome for most of the continent. Repeated heatwave events driven by blocking high pressure are the specific threat meteorologists and climate scientists are most concerned about, not just occasional warm days, but prolonged periods where temperatures stay dangerously above normal for days or weeks, with little relief at night and no significant rainfall to break the heat. Drought risk is highest across Iberia, France, Central Europe, the Balkans, Italy, and parts of Eastern Europe. Wildfire risk is elevated across those same regions. And the populations most at risk, the elderly, young children, people with cardiovascular and respiratory conditions, outdoor workers, and low-income households without access to cooling, will need support and proactive planning from governments and health systems that have consistently been caught underprepared. Like and subscribe, because the science on what is coming is clear. The historical evidence from 2025 is undeniable, and the time for preparation is right now, not after the next record is broken.